Okay. Morning to those who celebrate. This is. Um, Hang on, we're fixing some stuff up here. Uh, Today is QA day, which means we're going to take a look at what tickets we have in the queue, um, see if there's any that need validation, and then see if there is anything that needs test plans. Because we haven't done any of that, um, we are for sure going to need to do that. So let's get the board up and take a look. So you remember from yesterday, I'm going to get rid of this so that people don't keep telling me to update Chrome. So for a quick recap, yesterday we got through a majority of this landing page story to start getting some actual features into this application, and then we kind of um, talked with chat about like how certain pieces of this work, why the buy works on there, and we finally started using branches, which you should always be branching off of your main. But yeah, so what I want to do today is kind of go through. I mean, this will QA and validate pretty quickly because there's very little to check, which is a double thumbs up on that because you really you really want to keep what you're testing as small as you can. Like everything is just as small as you can, constantly small as you can. Um, and then for the other stories that are in there, we'll talk about whether or not like a test plan is something that we want to write up for that. Because while we could write test plans for each of these stories, um, there's really like not much in the way of testing. So like we want to be testing critical path stuff. So and then like building upon that and looking for what our smoke tests will be. So your smoke tests are uh, whether or not there's a fire somewhere, and you ensure that your uh, critical paths in your application are working. So, for example, if you have any part of your app that's monetized, you want those monetized paths to always work. Like you do not want your paying customers to not be able to use the things they're paying for. When I worked for GoDaddy, we had critical paths to make sure things could get into the cart and be purchased. Like that was the way that was one of the ways they made money, and that's an important thing to test. Uh, but at other places I've worked, it's always just, pardon me, what is the main user experience? What is the most important that it needs to work regardless of whatever else may be going on in the world. So like other parts might be broken, but you can still do these critical things each time, and it is important that users are able to. So the easy example, login. You should always check through your login path because if users can't log in, they can't use your tools. If they can't use your tools, you're going to stop making money. So that's why these test plans are important because we'll write them up, and if they're important enough, they might turn into automation. They also can become part of. I know there's software that can track test plans. Um, then you have your manual test plan that you set up for release testing with all of these items in it, and they become additive to each other. So there's a lot of good reasons to take the time to write out your test plans, especially when uh, you're looking to do work as a QA team asynchronously, because, uh, for example, um, if I had a team of 8 and just a couple of QAs, like they're going to get ahead of you, but they're not going to get ahead of you until they finish something. And if you're on a sprint, that's usually not until the end of the first week or into the second week. So, what are you doing during that time? Well, if you're most corporations, you're forcing QA to be the bottleneck, because uh, you're just not respecting the fact that QA is important. It's the same problem that IT teams get, where their work is like kind of invisible. Like when things are working well and they're bringing things up, it's a very short but very important loop. But as we have to make decisions to make arbitrary releases, it starts to just pile on. In the same way that for the developer teams, like as as leadership only focuses on what we're releasing and trying to put more features out there without like thinking about their impact or keeping it short term or keeping our MVPs, like all those important things that you do when you're building features out, then you just get piled on as a developer, because it's like, well, now there's 20 features that need to get out before the end of the month, and it's like it's not going to happen, and then it looks bad. So um, it's important. It's important to work in parallel. One of the ways you can do that as a QA is through test plans. If you happen to be a SDET, which would be a software developer, I think it's SD. I think it's software development engineer and test. I could be corrected on that. The crux of it is that you're also kind of writing tests for work that's coming through. That was something that I did for a while, where I was writing automated tests for the website we were working on for work that another developer had done, which is kind of nice because it's a second set of eyes on what's been built and whether or not it's testable. And sometimes that's a hard question to answer if you, as the developer who built the feature in the first place, have been working on it, continuously for a long period of time. Um, I compare it to work that my dad used to do. He worked with in construction, and specifically like residential construction. And when he would finish his work, he would walk through with the owners of the house, and the bit of feedback that he would get when he would ask them to do that is, well, how are we going to know if anything's wrong? Like, we're not the experts on this. And the analogy he'd give them is, stare at your carpet for 8 hours, and then when you're done, tell me if you think there's anything wrong with your carpet. And it's the same kind of blindness that we can get as developers, because we're looking at the same thing over and over again. We're going through a path that we know so well, that we become blind to the pieces of it that weren't part of that path. And so there's a lot of reasons why that second set of eyes is important, especially as these arbitrary deadlines become tighter and tighter and tighter. So some of that was to gush about how important QA is. It always holds a special place in my heart because of the work I've done as a QA. I wanted to make sure to speak about like why writing test plans is great and how that helps our future testing efforts. It helps parallelize the work that we're doing because there won't be things to QA right away. If we're working in like a sprint structure or something like that. And it's also, again, like these test plans are helpful for when we start if we aren't already doing some form of UI automation to uh, further, to use the term shift left, our quality assurance, so that we could write those and have a hook for it whenever we commit something to then run through our suite of tests. Um, we'll see if we can get into something like that. I don't know how far I can go with a free Bitbucket account and see if there are any hooks I can set up to run testing. At some point, we can start writing some UI automation for Android and some unit tests for some of the stuff that we're doing, especially now that we have view models. Uh, we can ensure that they're doing what they need to do, but we'll get there when we get there. So today we're going to talk about test plans. 12 minutes into the ramble. Well, now we're ready to talk about like how a test plan works. So I have used tools in the past for Jira. I believe there's one called X-Ray um, that I am at least familiar with. I do not know how much it's liked. It's been a couple of years since my primary focus was just QA, but I've had to wear that hat multiple times, either to help or pinch hit. So uh, I am not sure what modern practices for test plan tracking is, but we can, because Jira's boards are very permissive, and because we're a team of one, we can kind of make that decision for ourselves to see what it is that we need it to be. So let's see if we've got like a interesting looking test plan. Oh, there's TestRail. TestRail's another thing that I've used before. So we're going to take a look at their template. So let me pull this over so we can look at it together. Yeah, you might hear me go in and out. My nose has decided to rebel today, so I will do my best not to sniff too much into the mic. Um, some of these are fascinating. Having taken a look at them, like I've never understood why people want to have kind of arbitrary metrics. So, like, if we go through this together, where's my mouse? There we are. Um, yeah, we're kind of in this like set of two here. Like, we want to identify any defects that are in code that was just written. We also want to test a new feature. Our new feature being you push a button and it goes somewhere, but you know, on a bigger one, we would have more things to do. Um, I mean, some of it's interesting how much depth this is getting into when you really are. If it were me trying to explain to somebody for the first time what you want to do with a test plan, it would just be to I guess it would be something similar to this. Like, identify what you want to test, but make sure that it's small. Um, but usability testing is usually like a whole separate thing. Like, I've done that. I've heard it called like user acceptance testing and things like that, just to double check. I've not had test plans for these two through QA. Usually we have a third party. Like, for this, we usually have a third party that's doing pen testing, or um, something like that. And then for usability testing, that's like an extension of our product design teams and product teams, because product design deals with UI, UX, and other important design elements for the user's experience within the app. Um, and even then, like performance testing was uh, usually on the developers. Fascinating. I've never had this be formalized. It was always kind of a thing that happened when we started noticing we were having performance issues. So, like a lot of what I've done and what I've seen done in the past is functional testing. Like, just does it work the way I said it would, and does it handle like weird situations that it might be in? We're not trying to hit every edge case, but enough, because users are users. Like, once you could build something extremely solid, it could pass testing within your organization flying colors. But as soon as it's out in the real world, there's so many different situations that a device can be in that, you know, it'll break. But if you're covering as many edge cases, at least within your code as you can think of, and then kind of some of the this is something that you learned over time, like known issues. And this is why smoke tests and writing tests is so important, because if you're practicing good bug resolution, maybe part of that would be writing a test to ensure that the bug isn't happening again. And that's either part of your test plan to say that it's to check and make sure if it's that important, or your release testing. Again, like it could be a part of your smoke test suite if it's something that detrimental if it happens again, or it becomes part of your automated test suite. So it's all important, but now we're going to get into the part that I'm kind of like whatever about. Defect density. Measuring anything in lines of code is just already a bad start. You shouldn't be measuring performance in line. Excuse me. You shouldn't be measuring performance in lines of code of your developers. It's not a true statement. You shouldn't be measuring defects per amount of code you're writing. Like that's also a weird marker of like metric. Like it doesn't tell you anything, because if you were looking at it, so like let's say we were looking at that, we'll look at their example. You got 150 defects per 15,000 lines of code. Okay, what does that mean though? Does it just mean that for every 15,000 lines of code we're going to have 150 defects? Does it mean that someone in particular is causing a bunch of defects and we're starting to see a rise in them? Like it's an indicator, but it's not a strong example of anything. I do not see a great use case for defects per lines of code, because if I had so other situations for what this example is giving, and I understand it's like a one-liner example to describe defect density, but I really want to hammer home the fact that doing anything by lines of code, you're already probably in a bad space. So if I have 150 defects per 15,000 lines of code and it's one developer that caused all 150, what's it mean? Does it mean that the organization is failing because one person is causing a bunch of new issues? Is it something that we should be concerned about? Is it not? Like, there are other ways to measure defects, like team by team, that would make a lot more sense to track and have it be significant data, rather than looking at it holistically like this and saying, oh yeah, no, we got hundreds of thousands. Like, because what was it Telegram or WhatsApp? It was one of those two, like, has an insane amount of lines of code, like just insane amounts. So any number for defects would just look insignificant. Like if I got a million lines of code and 150 defects, like that's a low defect density. But again, does that mean anything? If all the defects are in the like one of our smoke test flows, well then that would be a significant thing that we need to take care of. It sounds like a lot of work's being done in there that's not, not quality. So again, like something at this high of a level means nothing. You can have a better chance by actually going through team by team and having them measure their own like defect density. But even then, like you should be able to know how many bugs are being returned based off of like stories and things like that. Like these are all important things to track, but they can be tracked individually at a smaller scale. So, and then like test coverage is another thing. It's like it's cool to have 100% test coverage, but again, when you're looking at that at a high level, what does that mean? Um, if my teams are small and moving rapidly because I don't know, we've hit some kind of like hyper growth and we're not able to find people that can work within our niche, like I can see test coverage slipping, but is it slipping because we have a bunch of tail end experiences that just don't like matter? Like if you get to them, there's nothing really significant to check. Um, this one's difficult because again, it's another high level view. It's kind of arbitrary, but it's also like having 100% test coverage is an interesting goal, but it's not a useful goal, I think is the term I'm looking for. Because really, what do you care about? Like, do you care that your critical paths are covered? How many things does that cover as far as like testing? Who knows? Again, just a weird like thing to pull like to look on. And then time to go away. Time to market is so I think this one's easiest with another quote, which is the past experience does not predicate future success. Um, if you're into the stock market at all, that probably makes sense to you. It would be like looking at, well, it's been growing for the past 3 months. Maybe it'll keep growing for another 3 months because look at how it's going, and it's like, well, no, there's no guarantee of that. There could be a whole bunch of things that happen, and you can see them real time with the news stories that come out. So time to market is interesting as in like how long it took, but it's a novelty. It's not a measurable thing. Like you shouldn't be. Yeah, these are weird. Let's take a look at the rest of it. I want to see what their template looks like because again, this is something that I've seen before. Like TestRail is a product that I've seen use test before, so. Um, this is important, yes. It's critical to identify what needs to be manually tested versus automated. You should be able to automate quite a few things. And you kind of want to do that. But yeah, I'd be curious. I'd be curious what would delineate the two. Like, what would be a good manual test and what would be a good automated test? Because for the most part, you should be able to automate the manual tests. The question, I think it's the last piece here of who will be doing that work. That's the big question. But yeah. I get. Okay, so I think this is like trying. This is trying to create something that's even larger than just what the project that you're on is doing. I don't know of anyone that uses test stuff to build like. Yeah, I don't know. Like exploratory testing is usually a part of a bug, so you would have written a bug for that and submitted it and tracked it through there. Um, Usability testing is also usually, I mean, yeah, that's manual testing. You can't really, you can't really automate users because users are random. So that makes sense, but like, I don't know. I've never really, I guess I've never tracked them in something like TestRail or X-Ray or something like that. So I might be in the wrong place looking at what I'm interested in. Set the criteria, testing resources, scope, approaches, test schedule, risk and issues. Yeah, that seems a little too big. Yeah, there's just so many things that could say that they're a test plan and say that they're this or that. Just just fascinating. Well, let's see if I can find X-Ray. I'll use something that I've used in the past. Jira trash. 24/5. Oh, okay. So yeah, it's only 5 days a week. That's funny. um, kind of just wish I could see what it looked like. Ah well. And that's also a maintained product, so if you were doing this on your own, you'd end up having to pay for it. Um, so, well, well, let's try it on our own, and then we'll evolve as we go. Um, ooh, I want to see. Let's see this. Like, I want to see some step-by-step stuff. Yeah, that I'm used to. Plan, design, execute, report. Um, so you might notice here with Cucumber, write tests in a business readable domain and specific knowledge. You might have, and then Gherkin at the end. I think I mentioned Gherkin when I was writing these stories. Yeah, that's what makes these really easy to do. um, no, show us a picture of a test. Where's a test that's like viewable? All right, fine. Don't show me one. All right, Gandalf, keep your secrets. Okay, so here's the other thing that we kind of have to decide is like where these tests are gonna go. uh, they could be they could be subtests on the current tests that we have to say, hey, this is this is how we track that. Some places will make a whole new project for QA so that they can track their test plans of what's completed and what's not, and then link the issues after the fact. Because, like we've seen before, if we look at the I am feeling page and come down, like we have these two linked issues that are blocking this story from being completed. So you could create another board for QA, and again, like this, all of these decisions are going to be things that matter, like for how your organization's structured. For example, most of the time that I have done QA work, it has been as an embedded member of the team. So there is very little to no chance that I would be going and having to do multiple projects like I was assigned to the single either product line or given project. But there are, in some of the orgs that I've contracted with, they have like a shared pool of quality assurance folks, and they kind of work wherever they're needed to help with whatever's going on. So, like in that case, that would, if you're managing them all together, then that would make sense to have a board for them so that you could see all of the work they're doing. Another thing, if you really want to get crazy, you keep them separate within the teams, attaching them somehow, or putting them in an epic that so that you can filter them out during certain parts of your exploration, and then you build another project that references all the other projects that you're keeping an eye on, with specifically filtering for either epics or tags that have to do with test plans or QA. Because then you can create an aggregate board on Jira to see those items without having to see all the other stuff going on. So, like, where these go and how they work is going to be highly dependent on how your teams are structured, and whether or not your resources are assigned to a specific project and like they own that, or if it's ad hoc. So all that to say, I think I'm going to do them as subtasks for now, so that I can see that that's a piece that needs to be done. You can also, like, I believe there's a Jira setting for before things move to being done, that like all their subtasks have to be done as well. So like that'll yell at me to say, hey, you can't move this until you finish the subtask. So that's an advantage of that. But let's see. So let's talk about this one real quick, since we are going to QA it today. Okay. Add a child issue. Excellent. Okay. I wonder what would be the best way to name this, because this is where we get kind of in a weird place. So maybe it's just landing page test plan. We can always change these. Cool. Let's go take a look at Feel 8. So now we want to take a look at our test plan. I wonder if I can get these so I can see them both. Probably not. Where'd you go, little subtask? Oh, no, it should be there. 0 of 1 child issues complete. So, does it not show on the board anymore? I guess. Interesting. These used to show up on the board. I wonder if that's a setting. The reason I'm interested in it, because I do want to see kind of what's on here. So what I'll do is I'll just keep this off to the side so we're not blocking anything. And then we can figure that out as we go. What do we got going on? So, let's see if we can put a table in here. From what I recall, I used to have this like 3-tiered table that would help, but I think we're going to go with the traditional like what do you need to test this, and what are you testing, and what's expected. So let's start with so the thing we want to make sure of is that we respect that we're starting from a cold start. So needed to test so then I think that, okay, if I recall, this would be the action, data, and expected. I think this is what it is. We'll get better at this as we go. That's just getting started and having something to throw things at is always better than sitting and wondering and thinking for too long. Like, there's always a good amount of planning. We probably could have found another page that talked about that, but I think the tangential that came from it was pretty good. But given the experience that I've had before and how I feel like this is, I believe this is the way to do it, we'll go with this. And if it's not working, if it's not serving us like quickly, then we can move to something else. But yeah, and that's what's important when you're dealing with this kind of thing. So, so what do we want? How do we want to kind of put this together here? Whew, nose is really, really trying to fight me today. All right. So for the first action, let's actually. I don't believe we need this. So the first action would be start app from cold start. Expected. With 2 buttons. Because yeah, if we look at our original ticket here. Oh, I'm sorry. I tried to mute before I sneezed, but I didn't get there fast enough. If we look at our original ticket here, woo, it's a killer morning for Manos. But yeah, if we look at our original ticket here, that's the first thing that needs to happen. Like, it needs to be from a cold start. And while that could be listed as like a setup thing, it feels more like an action. So yeah, we'll keep it as a. We'll keep it on the list of actions. So from there, when the app loads, I should see a screen with 2 prompts. So See it with the two buttons. So perfect. That's what we want. And there's no data that we need to make it do this, so that's fine. And using colloquial terms like, or excuse me, like defined terms like this is okay. Testing steps, while good if they're readable by almost anybody, you should still use terms that are specific to the platform you're on, because as a like there's I don't have an strong expectation that a user would know what a cold start is, but they would know if I was to say, go into your recents, remove the app from your recents, reopen the app, or describe to them, hey, go into the app info for that particular application, force stop it, it's okay, and then restart the app. So, like, that is something that a user would technically do. Calling it a cold start just makes this more readable. So that's why we're saying cold start. And then expected, after that we see the two buttons. So then what action do we want to take next? So in the story, we mentioned, like, if I have this buttons with this text, and then if I select one of the options, then it should take me to the blank page of the title with the flow chosen. So, so what should I see? Let's press a button. And this could be part of the verification for expected too, that the buttons say what they're supposed to. This might help as just shorthand to say there should be a button that says this, and that it would be out of place if it doesn't. Again, so like while these steps will make logical sense, the explanation of them is still written by a person. So as we work together and understand how we communicate, these will also evolve. So if we tap the button, there's no data that we need to put in to say how it works. But what should we expect? Are navigated to a new screen with the label I am feeling at the top. So yeah, so now we got that. And then because we want to test this ticket in its entirety, we can add the other step in there. You can separate them if it makes sense. I feel like we could do both here because the ticket calls out both. And what we might be looking for in the future is just a longer scale path for each of these features to go from beginning to end. But at the moment, we're just, we're checking to see if what they said does work. And small foundational tickets like these can help inform the larger scope tickets in the future. So what we would need to do is then tap back button or gesture back. Then I'm fine with the or statement there because both of them are accomplishing what we want to do, which is to go back through the stack on Android. There are a couple of ways to do that, and this is just me covering those cases. Then what's expected? We are then let's actually keep this consistent. So with the label I am feeling at the top. Yeah, let's keep this the same. Navigate it back to the landing page. And simply two buttons. Cool. So then now I want to tap button that just happened. the top, and then that'll complete it. So now what have we shown? That we started the app from a cold start, which was the first part of this. We tap the button and are ensured that we're navigated to something's got this label. We tap the back button so that we can test the next part of the path. It then goes back, and then we do that just happened, and now we're navigated to the that just happened page. So those, let's save that real quick so that we have them. Cool. So we can then execute this test plan and see if it does what we said it will do. So let's see how we want to do this. I might close some windows here real quick so that I can more easily pull up things. Oh. Okay. Can't close that window, so let's see what else we can do to organize this up. What do we got? What do we got? Okay. Oh. Just a second here. All right, we're gonna do our best. Okay, so let's pull up Android Studio. Let's see here. I don't think I have anything. I committed everything yesterday. Okay, so part of QA would be working with whatever's the most recent, and there are a couple of paradigms on this that make sense. So with what I was doing at the hang on, there's a couple of thoughts here. So let's talk more about how it's done first, and then where we are. I've had teams where QA happens only in the main branch. So it would be items that were approved by the team and then have migrated into the main branch through merge. I've had teams where, so like I'm obviously creating a branch based off of, each ticket that's available or each user story. So that might make sense to have the users or have that branch wait until it's completed so that it can be QA'd. And that introduces an interesting number of like conflicts with like continuous integration. So you kind of want to make sure you know what methodology you're using before you start like with what you want, how your QA plans go. But I'm thinking because we are because we're trying to do continuous integration, which means that we should be committing to development or made or like however it is that you want to keep those separated and keep track of versioned releases. I think that we should QA off of whatever is the most up to date. So that would be either your development branch or, in my case, the main branch, because that's the only one I have. So what that means is that instead of working on a specific, feature branch, if I'm QAing, I should be on main. because that will have all the most up-to-date stuff. The other thing that's nice about doing it that way means that any other changes that have hit the system are also there and can affect what I'm doing quality assurance on. So if for some reason an interaction between two people's work was missed, we should be able to catch it relatively quickly. So I think this is the way to go for now. So I'm going to pull up main, and then I'm going to sneeze again, and then we'll get started on running through the test plan. Okay, so we've got main. Let's make sure we've got the most recent of main. Cool. So there's our work from. Okay, good. Yeah, this is this is enough to confuse me. I'm looking. I was like, I didn't write any of this to my knowledge. Um, Wait a minute. Did that? Oh dear. Okay. Let's see if that. Where's the old bit bucket? Okay. So, why does this have a button though? Did this not refresh? Yeah, we are on main. So, right. So, here, the growing pains of using a different thing. I have for most of my career worked off of feature branches that are long lived and don't get closed until you are done. I forgot that part of the whole reason we were doing the CI thing, and I just said it a moment ago, which is very funny. Um, Part of that, the reason we're doing it this way is because we will um, we will commit things as often as we can so that we can see errors as they meet together. I forgot that's what I was doing because I'm so used to the old way of doing things. So, this is an interesting thing that I might have to do some more research on for how this affects a test plan because now my test plan for that just happened is incorrect. Like, that will quote unquote fail. Um, the label's no longer there. So, that might be something I have to ask my friends that are working within this to help me out with. But what that means is that that's why we're seeing this because we're supposed to because we're doing things the right way. So let's get the emulator kicked off, and then we can run through these test plan steps. So we'll just do that. Okay, so let's do the things we said we'd do. Let's get this into a cold start. Okay, so that's the first part of the test plan there is the started from a cold start. We should see the splash screen. Perfect. I wonder if I could just do this, and then this, and then view mode, window, perfect. We'll go. Actually, I'm going to yank it over here, and then we'll bring it back over once I pull this back up. Cool. Okay. So, started from a cold start. We see the buttons. Perfect. Now we tap I am feeling. Navigate into the I am feeling page with the label I am feeling at the top. Great. We'll go back. We see the buttons again. Perfect. And then we click that just happened, and we get a different thing because we're continuously integrating. So that's okay. But yeah, again, we should see what happens there. And then if you can, it's always nice to test this on a device, especially if you have a Samsung device. They've always been the bane of Android development. I would not worry about it in the start. So, like with something like this, I am an Android user, so I do have a device, and it's worthwhile to test it on that device. But without a good enough amount of user data, you don't know which devices you should be focusing on. So either check hardware trends or wait until you have a significant enough amount of data so that you can know what you should be testing on. As far as other things, like we could check and see if these buttons demand, like just regular user stuff, like if they're just. So let's see, did we open multiples of those? Yes, we did. Look at that. So the button is not debounced. So that's a bug. And this, people do this. I'm not kidding. So like, I can get. Yep. So the buttons are not debounced, and that I would consider that a bug. So we've got our first bug. Cool. Let's write a bug up for that. Let's put you away for now. Let's come back over here. So, I wonder how we want to do this because we're in queue. So let's make another child on this to say, because the reason why we're linking all these this way is because we want to be able to track what happened with it and why. And if you remember what I was complaining earlier about those metrics, these are the ways that you start looking at a more nuanced approach at what those metrics are at a smaller scale. And I feel like that is much more important than like tracking something at that 1,000-foot look of lines of code versus defects. Like that doesn't make sense to me. So in this case, it looks like I can't make a bug subtask. I wonder if I can. Wonder if I can change that. But let's put this down as debounced on page. Cool. Create that. We'll go into it. So we got our first bug on QA day. That's amazing. Like that is exactly. It's exactly what we want. So the way, excuse me, the way that I write bugs is always as just repro steps and then expected actual. Like just keep it as simple as possible. Make it so that someone can follow the steps to get that quickly, and then tell them what it is that I want it to do. So let's get the first one in here. Old start. And this is what's nice about that test plan, is because the steps are basically what's in the test plan. I forget how the numbered bullets look like this. Let's see here. Oops. What do you, Jira? Okay, that's good. Yeah. I mean, they don't have to be numbered if you follow them in order, but I just like the formatting. Start out from a cold start. Tap furiously. Let's switch that up. Okay, so the reason I switched that up is because the expected actual should be right after the action that you're trying to take that failed. So what I was originally planning to do was to write something down about how, like, oh, you know, the expected is that only one I am feeling goes on the stack, and then the actual was like, oh no, but it's multiple. But really, what the issue is, without getting that deep into the architecture for Android, is that I do the thing. What I want to do is go back to the landing page, but I can't. So like that's the failure point. That's the actual thing that is the bug, not the fact that multiple of the screen is on the stack. So remember, you wanna kind of write in that order. You want to write up to the point where now you're trying to do something and you can't. So that's why we changed that up. Man, my apologies. This is quite the morning for my nose. Um, anyway, so expected. I am taken to the landing page. Actual. I have to tap back all times before I reach. Okay. And we could do this again. I am not opposed to just paste, start out from a cold start, tap furiously on the that just happened button on the landing page, have to tap step. So, yep. And then also a good thing to check too, follow your steps. It only takes a couple of seconds. So let's follow my own steps here. Let's get this out. Start from a cold start. Cool. Cool. And then start from a cold start. And then there it is again. So, good steps, reproduces it. If you can, sometimes a video is helpful, especially if it's kind of like a intermittent or interesting setup. Sometimes it's as straightforward as this is, but it's if you can, sometimes the video's good. Android Studio's gotten a lot better at helping you record what the emulators are doing, or even what's going on a hardware device if you've got it connected and it can see it. So it's not as difficult as it used to be, but there are times where either the video helps show that what path was taken is working to expectations, because that's possible too. Communication breakdown happens all the time, and or even then, like, we might see that and then look at it, go, hey, product, how much do you care about this? And they'll be like, not at all. And it'll be like, thanks for reporting that. We're gonna close the bug as won't fix. Working as not working as intended, but just write a note in there as to why we aren't gonna bother. So sometimes it's pretty helpful. In this case, I'm not going to do it because this is very straightforward and it's quite easily reproducible. So let's save that bad boy. We are not going to fix this today. We will fix that probably next Wednesday during triage, because that would be when we would make sure to see if we want to fix this now. But also, this is a nice callback to my little monologue about why QA is so important. Because as a developer, again, look at your carpet for 8 hours and then tell me if there's something wrong. I spent however long I spent, talking about it and doing stuff and clicking on it and all that. And then what did I do? It was like, yeah, this works. So I submitted it for code review, quote unquote, submitted it for code review. But I took all those steps under the knowledge that, this totally worked. And the thing, too, is that the rapid clicking is not always somebody's first thought. I only know about it so well because, one, I'm out of context of developing and just seeing if it works. But two, because I've had buttons that aren't debounced that cause a lot of problems. So it was something I thought of when I was in my QA headspace. And that's why that's important. That's why an extra set of eyes is so important, because they're in a different headspace. They haven't been doing this same path mind-numbingly for however long, reading documentation in between. So yeah, you can see why that's so valuable. Now, imagine the user experience if it was slow for some reason, and it could be for a ton of reasons that are just unrelated to the app. You could have other applications be bad neighbors and cause memory problems, which slow your app down. Like there's literally a warning. I wonder if it's still there, but there was a time when there was a warning on iOS that would tell you if other apps were misbehaving so that you could close them. It's a real problem. So something else that's outside of your control could cause this issue. And then the user, being a user, what do you do when a button doesn't work for the first time? You press it again. You want it to work, so you press it again. They could get 2 to 3 to, however frustrated they feel, set of of pages in between that they weren't expecting and they can't get back. Would that flow complete? Oh, of course, yes. But I think we're going to see these same debouncing problems as we go on, because like that next button is going to cause a debouncing problem. I don't think the feeling selections are gonna cause them either, but we caught it this early, so now us as developers are going to keep that in our heads when we are verifying the next set of tickets coming through. Product gonna do the same thing, because now they're aware that buttons may or may not need to be debounced, and that is something that they can keep in consideration when they're writing future user stories. Like, there's so much from a quality perspective that happens just because we have somebody who cares about that. That's why the QA is so important. Please don't ignore your QA. Please don't. Yeah, please use them and give them the tools they need, because It'll save you a lot of headache. So yeah, there we go. Now we got a bug there. Um, yeah, I guess the weird thing about this is the fact that I'm not going to be able to see it. Interesting. I wonder. I'm gonna have to like configure the board to make sure that this can be visible because on triage day, the only reason I know it's there is because I put it there. So I will have to hope that I remember by next Wednesday that there's a bug. um, but yeah, more things to figure out as far as like settings on this. Open issues in sidebar, issue, linked issues. What's this do? Does this turn that on? Oh, it just shows you that they have links. Okay, so that would, if I was to refresh, I'm sure it will show me that if I turn that on. No. Okay, so it doesn't show subtasks like that. Fascinating. Okay, well, we QA'd this. It didn't work out, so what you would do in this situation when there is a bug, you would kick it back. Some people will assign the QA when they do it. Some people will leave it as the developer, but it's again like this is one of those tracking things that is unfortunate. There like isn't a way to track who QA'd this unless you make it a field over here to have that person be assigned to something. Because like you have the reporter field, there's this assignee, there's the person who wrote it, like all kinds of stuff. But I believe you can add more and more things to this to say who did what on it. But it just makes it more and more difficult. Like having this is nice because I could assign it to the QA and like this test plan would be assigned to them, and then if they were the ones that executed it. But yeah, there's really not like a nice way of keeping track of what has been QA'd by who, unless they're commenting or adding stories or something like that. So it's difficult in some ways. I can vote on this? That's funny. I wonder details, notifications, issue types. Is there a way I can add that might be something I'll do on my own or just not care about it. But interesting. I wonder if it's a part of the workflow. No. Nope. Leave. I don't want to deal with that. Interesting. It used to have like a way to have a bug subtask so that it would show up, but that's fine. Yeah, again, maybe this will be a Monday thing because this would be a product deal, and that would be who would care the most about it. But yeah, so yeah, we found a bug on this. We kicked it back so that the developer can take a look and see if they can fix the issue. Yeah, pretty good for an hour's work of rambling and then double checking on that particular item. So we could continue. We should probably continue writing test plans. That's probably best. Let's see what else we got going on. Okay. All right. let's look at the journal entry function. So what do we have? Single step to allow the user to enter journal entry into the other flows. Okay. So this one becomes an interesting thing because as a QA, I can see a couple of things, and if I'm enough of a subject matter expert about Android, you might remember me mentioning this yesterday, but part of screen rotation is that the view is destroyed, and so it won't retain data that's in it unless you tell it to, which is what we did. So I wonder if that needs to be part of the test plan, or if that's like a yeah, I think it could be part of the test plan because this would be something like if we think about it during our ticket refinement sessions, it would be a great question to ask our product team because maybe they don't see the phone rotating as part of it. Like maybe they feel that their tool should only be locked into portrait mode because of like how much use it gets on a phone, and we don't want it to be able to rotate, at least for now. Like that might remove the need to worry about like different, like the foldable Pixel or the bigger tablets. There's a lot of reasons, but something that's aesthetic like that is not the decision of the developers or QA. That should be a decision from your design team. You should be checking in with product and design. Design should have their final say on that because they would have done the user research or are helping with scoping to say, hey, no, we don't need to scope landscape into this. However, there are ways as a developer to test that the information will be retained. I don't remember if backgrounding the app will cause it to go away or if it sits long enough in the LRU cache, it can it might lose it. Oh, it's been a while since I've had to test for ways that you would lose user inserted data, and I think it's just because instead of just accepting that it might get lost, I was doing things to ensure that it would stick around. So yeah, because while locking the phone to portrait will fix the use case for the view being destroyed when changing to landscape, it doesn't handle every use case for losing user data when like another app takes over or something like that. It's like you get a phone call or something. So it's important to ensure that works. Given that I'm the product owner for this, and like this is the thing too, this ticket may be in motion, like a developer is working on it currently. A developer is working on it currently. Oh, I'm very bad. It's still okay to ask questions like that while the ticket's in flight because we should be open to change. We just have to accept that it may change the timeline. So as the QA that's looking at this and saying, oh, we didn't consider whether or not this needs to be locked. Yeah, now is a fine time to answer it while you're writing out your test plan because that would be, it should be, if you're a mobile QA, part of your test plan, like what happens when the phone rotates. Because like that does matter and does have an effect on user experience and can be a defined user experience. So yes, Pardon me. You need to know that. And just because it's being currently worked on doesn't mean it can't be either fixed in the moment or, and this is the other thing too, I think this is the part that people forget. It might be that, who cares? Right now, nobody cares. Like, does it matter? No. Like, this isn't out yet. This feature hasn't been, there's no access to this to anyone, so they won't just get a weird experience when they mess with it. So why not just write another ticket and prioritize it with the rest of the work? That's fine too. Like, it doesn't have to be fixed in this ticket. If it's going to significantly change the work in the ticket, then we should probably talk about what it looks like to stop what work they've got, see what can be, salvaged from the fact that we made a big miss, and move forward from there and like recalibrate the timeline for how long this will take. But it's also the case, it's just like, well, I mean, if they finish coding this and it goes through and gets checked, like what's that look like? And yeah, like it's fine. Like that is a fine thing to do. We got another spam bot in the chat. Go away, spam bot. You are a bot. Actually, wait, let me make sure I get your... God, what even is this? It's such a fascinating thing. What is that? What is this site? I've never heard of that particular URL. I'm wondering if it's just not, I wonder what that... Yeah, it just this part of the world fascinates me because it's just like malicious stuff like this. Like sometimes it's done like White Hat, which I do like. I do enjoy White Hat hackers. I think they're great people. But it's just like, what are they trying to do? The nice thing though is that when I report these get like nailed within the day. So like, I'm going to send this now. I'll get an email in like a minute or two saying, hey, thanks for the report. And then 2 or 3 minutes later, I will get another email that says, hey, we actioned it. Thanks for getting rid of the bot. I know like I'm one person against a like bot, but I see a bot a day. So that's a lot of bots over time. But like I said yesterday, someday I'll be famous and I'll have mods that'll help me. But anyway, so after tangenting off of that, yeah, I think to wrap that thought up, something we forget as like people working on something, because we want it to be right the first time, like we just do. It's nature. It's okay, but one of the options we do have is like for this acceptance criteria here, if I didn't put in a piece to say, oh, hey, this should only work in portrait mode, I mean, does that affect the rest of the work? No. I can write that in another ticket. We can get that done later. So remember that is an option available to you when you are working through stuff like this to to handle change. I think we should all be open to change. So don't be afraid of it. Don't let it feel like it's going to derail everything you're doing. Just see what you can do to work with it. So yeah, so if we were to write up a test plan for this guy, well, let's go through those steps because we're thinking about whether or not we want to handle that. And I'm the product person and UX person, so let me think for a moment on what it is that I want it to do. nose is really trying to take me out on this one. But this is turning out to be one of the more important days to talk about, so I don't want to lose this. So what do I want to do? At the moment, I can't think of a use case that fits where I would want this to be in landscape, unless it was for like a teaching experience for the folks that are watching. I think as a user, I probably wouldn't type this out or look at it in landscape. I could see for future stuff, being able to view like graphs in the landscape format might be helpful for a user, but also I've seen implementations for data visualization in portrait mode that like they aren't half bad. They would serve the purpose. So I think for now, I think we're just going to lock the app into portrait mode because it's the easy top level thing to do. And then if in the future we need to make a different decision on that, we would just take a look at all the views we have, force them into portrait, and then the ones that can transfer should. So I think the right thing to do is to write a ticket to lock us into portrait. So hold on. Yeah, apologies for all the dead air. Ooh. Yeah. For my folks that are also immunocompromised for whatever reason, you probably understand. But yeah, just some mornings are like this. Okay, so what do I want to do here? I want to I'm not sure what a good use case for this is. I think we just use the logic that I used, which was at the moment. In our layouts, This is the other thing too. Like, I'm not a designer, so gosh, Jira, why do you do this? Silly Jira. Anyway, so again, because I'm not a designer, like I don't know if there's a big issue with doing this way or not. I don't have the user research or like any data to really tell me that you should have this should be in landscape because some people use the little side keyboard or something. So we will make this decision now, and then as we get better data in the future, we can make better decisions. So yeah, that should be straightforward enough. Doesn't talk about implementation, just says, hey, whatever it's doing, keep it in portrait mode. Cool. Let's create that. And then there it is. So, and it can sit at the bottom. I really don't care. Just as long as it's tracked and it gets done. Like, that's all that matters. Okay, so let's go back to the journal entry function here. I don't think I have a subtask on it yet, so that's fine. Okay. I wonder if there will be a way for them to test this. Probably not. As I'm sitting here thinking about this, the way that this is described would be that the component wouldn't be hooked into the flow just yet. If I remember, that's how I wrote this. So there wouldn't be a way to test this without having it be part of the flowchart. So I wonder if it would be better to have a separate test plan for this. Yeah, this is... That's a good question. Yeah, because there's not an easy way to do it unless they were to make it part of the thing from the start. Okay. I think we might forego a test plan on this one in particular. It could be interesting, like as a note, to just have what it's supposed to do written out if there's like time for that, just to test this as a thing on its own, and then just have that for when the actual test part starts. just don't want to. Well, I mean, I wouldn't lose that. No, we can do it. Yeah, let's do it. We're going to do it. We're going to add a child issue. Cool. Oh, that's right. I have Confluence. Cool. Yeah, I got to see if I can make a test plan subtask and a test plan task. That'll be nice. Test plan for journal entry. Yep. Create that. Let's go take a look at it. Let's get this onto the journal entry so we can switch back and forth. Awesome. And then I'm going to duplicate this so that I can refer to it without having to keep popping back and forth and changing context here. Okay. So again, we were working on this yesterday, but let's talk about it today. We show the box and the disabled button. Button should read next. So what can we test here? We can actually test quite a few things. Something that's probably I'm doing with my test plan that's probably not the best is not splitting it into phases, because what I could see here in order to hit every section of this would be to start it, show the box, click the next button, which should do nothing because there's nothing in the box. Then enter some text. Then see if the next button's enabled or not, just as like a check. Then delete all the text in the box, see if the button disables again. Put text in the box, and then hit the next button to go do the next step. So I can do all of that in one flow, but from a like testing perspective, you'd want to do those things separately. You don't want to test all of that together. Like if you were testing the functionality of the next button, then you could probably group those two items together to say, okay, when I enter, it's disabled. When I type text in and then delete the text, it's disabled, and that confirms that it's in the disabled states when you want it to be disabled. And then you would have another test that would test the like happy path. So happy path meaning that everything works the way it's intended and there's no problems. Then you would test the happy path of like, I see the screen, I enter the text, I press the button, and it does the thing. So those are distinct, but there's also a way when you're manually testing this to test all of those steps at once. And here I'll show you what I mean, and then we can talk about like why it might be good to separate it or not. So I should probably just call these setup and tear down so that it matches the other testing paradigm. So I think we're going to do that, and we'll switch the other one. Again, these terms and communication styles and all this stuff is important to let evolve and establish with your teams, because all that matters is, does it make sense to the team? And then if it makes sense to the team, it can probably make sense to everybody else. It should still be readable. It should still make sense in context, but what you use to define these is something that you should agree upon as a team. So let's do that. I don't think I have. I think it just blanked out. I also have the channel manager up on my phone. The screen is black on my phone, but I have a feeling that's not the case. Okay, good. Just need to make sure. That would freak me out. I am recording this locally so that I have it, but I don't want a bunch of blank space. So we're going to do setup. Um, and I wonder, again, it's been a little bit since I've written test plans, but it could be written end to end. Like, where does that belong? Does it belong in the setup so that it gets you to where you want to be? Or not? I might put it in the setup. Because, like, again, let's do these things until we know better. At the moment, it makes sense to be end to end about it because I do want this test to like do the things that I expect it to. But if it were truly up to me, I would want to be able to work with these views individually and somehow give them data such that they such that they're tested in isolation, because that should be faster than doing the same, X number of steps beforehand to get to where you want to be. So I think at the moment we're limited with end to end. I'm not sure how view models and testing interact, and how to get a I don't want to have to do it that way, because what you can do is here, let's pull up the code real quick so that we can talk about this. Like, this is important because it has to do with specifically testing. But here's the thing. So the view model is created here. The thing is that there's nothing here that says it should accept a different view model, or like there's no constructor injection here to make it so that if I build the view, I could, as a part of building this component, give it whatever view model I want, as long as it's scoped, or excuse me, as long as it extends, this view model. So that would be like you're building an interface for every implementation, so that you could then pass in a different interface that might be full of stubs or shims or something. So the reason I'm groaning is because you can come here and probably put it in here as part of this building your composables, which would require a bunch of like view models to be initialized, and that doesn't feel good because you either end up with a moment in here when app main's called to then like build something that the application can use to fetch view models. But yeah, I'm curious how this works out, because if this works the way that systems that do care about like constructor injection do, then I should be able to pass it in as part of the view And then I should also be able to invoke that. I wonder if I can invoke this in an espresso test and then do that. That would be pretty cool. It is something that I have personally wanted since I started working with espresso, is the ability to run a fragment or an activity in isolation. I've seen places kind of do it, but it takes a lot of setup for something that shouldn't. So now I'm curious on that. Anyway, it's something to think about. Like, testability is important. That's why we went down this path. Shoot, now I'm all fascinated, but it's QA day. We stick with what we're saying. Let's go here. But we still didn't really come to a conclusion. Let's assume that it's single screen. If that's the goal I want, let's work towards that goal. This is why we discuss things before we just start typing them out. It doesn't mean that I have the right answer, but I have a better answer than if I just started, putting stuff down and went good enough. So it's important to discuss things. It's important to think them through. It's why I have a tablet that I can write on that just is there. So I can write these thoughts down or think about it through writing first and not just start typing, because that's my plaque that I keep on my desk that says weeks of programming can save you hours of planning. Yeah, planning's good. So all right. So for setup, I'm going to do both paths just because I don't really have something else at the moment. Right. Let's get the... We'll do the same table. Nice little 3-column table. What did I even call that? I just do things and then I forget that I did them. And see, they already actioned the bot report. Way to go, Twitch. I wonder if it's automated. I wonder if they just check some things and go, yeah, that's probably a bot. Because it's wild. Like this account, that did this, is created like 3 years ago. So yeah, just wild. Anyway, so what did we do? That's the bug. That's not what I wanted. Let's rename this so that it fits the rest of the test. Like that. We're gonna make this setup. This is testing steps, and I did action, data, and expected. Okay. Let's get this back to where it started from. And I'll flip. I have it over here so I don't have to keep flipping back and forth. But if I want to see something specifically, I'll pull it back up so that it makes sense. But the first thing we need to do, so we're assuming that we're already there. Like that's just part of the setup. So let's. I wonder if we should separate the cases. Let's separate the cases. Let's separate concerns. So let's do the let's do heading 2. Okay, so action. I arrive on the page, no data, expected, next button is disabled. Tap the next button. Nothing happens. Perfect. Enter text to the text box. That's fine. They don't have to, but I like being silly in these because these are boring. So you enter some text box. Next button is enable. Remove all text from the text box. Next button is disabled. Cool. So we arrive on the page, and we should see that the button is in its disabled state. If I tap it, nothing should happen. If I enter text into the text box, and again, being silly, the next box should enable. And then I remove all the text from the text box, so this sets that back into the state where there's nothing in it. Then it should disable again. I should be able to tap it, and then nothing should happen. Let's do. Yep, next button disabled state. Perfect. And then for case 2. All right, and what I'm going to do is this is more or less the same thing. So we're just going to. Whoops, that's the comment. I want this. How do I? Oh, there's a button. Okay. Cool. So I arrive on the page. Next button is disabled. Tap it. Nothing happens. Enter text in the text box. It enables. Remove all text. It disables. Tap it. Nothing happens. Enabled. I think we'll just go with save to app state. Like, if you don't know how it's going to be done, ask somebody if it's being worked on currently, or just ask the team if there's something generic that can be put in there, because it really, like, you probably won't be able to verify it unless you are also, like, working in Android. And it doesn't really matter because the ticket ends with it saves it or it reports it back to its parent. So it's not something that you could verify. All that matters is that you tap it and it does something, but there's nothing that happens after you tap the button. So the only way to verify that anything happened would be to do that and possibly ask if your team could put something in the logcat that says that it did it, or that it shows the data, or something to give you the confidence as a QA to say, yeah, no, we've done enough the ticket. Because again, what's the ticket say? Report back the data. Okay. What's that mean? What it means is an implementation detail. So like, again, just work with them, have them do something for you so that they can see it. And that's fine. That's just fine. Everybody wants this to work. So yeah. Cool. So we navigate to the page, or we figure out how to do this single screen. This checks if the button's disabled in the right context. This checks if the button's enabled in the right context. And you might be seeing now, because so many of those steps were similar, like what I meant earlier when I was like, I could just write this whole test path as one long test and ensure that the button's doing the things that we expect it to. But the actual use cases for these two are very different. Like the use case for the first one is the button disabled when it needs to be? And you can check that by doing those things. And then in the second use case is, does the button enable when it's supposed to? And what's it do? So when it's enabled, what's it do? Same thing with the one before. Like you tap the button to make sure that it does nothing. You tap the button here to make sure that it does something. So there's a case for keeping them separate. There's a case because then the failures are very specific on what flow it failed on, or if it failed on both. So that's a lot of good data. So, but again, talk with your team about, like, is it better to do one or the other if you're not sure, because like both are valid. Both are extremely valid. Cool. All right, so those are the, I would probably want to prioritize the in progress ones for test plans if there aren't any at the moment, because they're in progress. So they're probably going to need a test plan pretty soon. But that makes sense to me. So I guess we move on to the selection function here. Let's see if this is clear enough. So having this be separate, yeah, similar to the other one. It should be a 3-step process starting from the inner circle, then the middle, then the outer. And then report back with the chosen data. Okay. I would wonder, so see, like, we start thinking about this, like this makes sense as a happy path for selecting each one of them, but there are steps in this that are missing. And this is why we look at tickets together, because again, like, you zero in and you miss things that are important, like I did on the day that I wrote it. I'm wondering, I'm hoping that perhaps you might see what it is that's missing. I'm going to leave it here for like a second or two. There's unfortunately nobody in chat that I can ask at the moment, but like, take a look at this, and I'll read the acceptance criteria before I give you the silence to say what might be missing from this. And remember, we're thinking in terms of like a test plan. So it's things that a user could do to this, and we don't know what to do. So this should be a 3-step process, starting from the inner circle, then the middle circle, then the outer circle. And for context on that, oh right, the feeling wheel's on the next ticket. So like, the context on that is this. So here's the wheel. So middle, so inner, middle, and then outer. So we go 1, 2, 3. Okay. And to start, we'll have buttons that correspond to each of the selectable emotions for that tier. I think the buttons are a good idea because it'll be really hard to represent a wheel with that small of text. I don't want to do that on a phone. I don't want you to have to zoom in to pick the thing you want. Yeah. So if I've started the emotion selection flow, then I want to be presented with the top level options as buttons for my emotional state. Cool. If I selected emotion, then show me the next level of options as buttons for that selected top level emotion. So meaning if I click angry, then show me the inner ring the middle ring for the angry emotion. If I select an emotion from the next level, then show me the last level of options as buttons for the selected top level emotion. So what it's doing is it's establishing that everything is connected to the inner circle. So that's how you make these decisions on which tier to show, like what group of them to show, because each tier is designated to a parent emotion. So that's why that works that way. If I select an emotion from the last level, then report back with the chosen data. Again, because we don't really have a way of storing this yet, or thinking about like how we get this back into the app state, so report back. Now, knowing that, I'm going to give it like a minute or two so that you can read it over again yourself, but I want you to think about like what might be missing from this ticket. All right. If you thought about what does the back button do, then that would be one of the ones that I thought of. So what happens if I start backing out? Like, should I do something to the user? Should it just handle the back presses and let them reselect? Like, what's it do? And that's the big one. I don't know how big of a problem that is, but it is something to ask, just to make sure that it's defined that if they hit the back button, then just go back to the previous screen and then let them keep, traveling forward. And as an implementation detail, like that's pretty easy to do. So, but it's good to know, like, if you want to force them to start, like, because another option would be if they're on the second or third page, it's just as well when they hit the back button to be like, start the process over. Because the only thing that they would have the opportunity to change is the middle one. Because I either am on the first page, I hit the back button, and then I go back to the landing page. It's like, okay. Or I'm on the that just happened flow, which starts with the journal entry. I press the back button, now I'm back at the journal entry. Like, okay. If I were to go forward and I'm on the second on the middle ring selection, it'll just take me back to the inner ring selection. If I'm on the third rung, that would be the only time that it's something different, because then it would take me back to the middle and then back to the inner if I keep pressing the back button. So is the use case when you get to that edge, oh, actually maybe I'm not angry, or is it, oh, I picked the wrong one on the second level and now I want to make sure that I want to go back and pick the right one. So
it sounds like minutia, but it's important because you're you're kind of like you're directing the user how to use this tool and what those different things do, but you also don't want to make it too tedious. So, like me, I'm a path of least clicks. So, if I was to hit the back button twice from the third rung selection, that's no different to me than hitting the back button, seeing a dialogue, and saying go back to the first, or saying go back to the second. Like that's 2 clicks. So either way, I've got a maximum of 2 clicks that I'm asking of my user. So as a person who uses applications and has a passing knowledge of user experience, I would probably just opt for it to just whenever you press the back button, it just goes back to the selector for the previous ring, and that would be okay. But it is, like I said, it's important to know because there might be a reason why you want to give the user the ability to change their inner circle selection from the second and third rings, like something intentional. Maybe it's something that we learned through our user research. Maybe it's something we've learned from our subject matter experts. Say that we had partnered with somebody who had a better understanding of like how this is useful and can be effective. Like that helps too, because you want to do things in a way that is researched and makes sense. So yeah, all of that to say, there's a lot of thought that goes into putting this together, and it's all important. So for me, what I think is the correct thing to do is to allow the back button to function normally. So yeah, so then let's get that in there as a piece. Cool. So now it's explicit. If I'm on the middle tier, when I press the back button, then take me back to the inner tier. If I'm on the outer tier, when I press the back button, then take me back to the middle tier. And then it can remember the selections going through. So easy peasy. But that's important and something that we can change now since nobody is working on this ticket. So we're allowed to do that change. When we do something like this, if we are doing things like story points or like effort and stuff like that, we should even if it had points before, it should most definitely go back through refinement. Even if this seems like very low stakes on adding it, nobody knows that, especially not product, and not because they are unaware, but because implementation's not their concern. They rely on the engineering teams to understand if implementation will be complex or not. So that's just good separation of concerns. So anytime you're making changes to a ticket, whether in flight or not, you need to bring it back to the group. If you can't resolve, like if it's in flight, if someone's working on it, talk with them and see if it changes anything. They are going to be the subject matter expert given that they're working on it currently, so they know best. But if it's not being worked on and it needs changes made to it, and we've already stated that it was ready for development before, we need to do it again. Even if it's like, for this, to be honest, this is normal. This may be normal behavior. To be like, in this case, I don't know if this is normal behavior, because if I build the composables, like, I don't know how to implement this, is the short of it, in Jetpack Compose. I can think of like view pagers and crap like that, but because I don't know how this works, this could change the way that I want to put it together. Like, I could make a line of 3 composables so that each one like navigates into the other, but there's probably also a way to contain them all into a single composable and let them scroll through, and then just grab the back clicks so that they scroll backwards. Like, who knows? But for me, given that I don't know how to do this, this has increased the complexity of the ticket, because now I got to figure out how to make sure this works. So you can see why, after making these changes, it's important to, again, look at the tickets again and make sure that the changes are good. So yeah, a little thing that turned out to be a big thing, and it also added 2 more cases to this whole ticket. So, like, I mean, that is significant. But yeah, so how do we write a test plan for this? What's this? The feeling selection. Okay. All right, what's the setup for this bad boy? We need to get to this. It's got a similar navigational flow to the journal section, so that's good. So let's just do something similar there. What did I actually write for this? I'm sad these don't just pop up. Call these testing steps. It's amazing what I forget in the short period of time. Okay, so let's come back here and take a look at this story again. Does this have multiple steps? Yes, because we have the happy path, which is just going through. And then we have the back button path. So there are 2 test cases in this that we want to kind of have be distinct. So let's make them distinct. So we'll do
table in here. So action data spectrum. So okay, so I wonder if we need to do a little more higher level than this. I don't think I'm going to be. I was thinking of being explicit in what you should see when you do that, but that would make this like a very overblown test. And if you were automating this, you probably wouldn't test every one of them. You could. Like, the automation would make it very easy to ensure all of the ones that you think should be there are there. Yeah, like string verification is pretty simple. But it's kind of tedious, and for a test case, all you care about is this. So what you can do instead is, why don't we just where's my pull this over here. Do I not just like did I delete my feelers wheel? That would be silly of me. Here you are. Well, there's one of you. So there's the wheel. I could also just link the story that has the actual wheel in it. That would be fine too, but yeah. Whoops. Let's not do that. Hang on. I want to verify that they're there. So you should see the middle tier of emotions as separate buttons. Then okay. I keep them. This is the inner. Yeah, I want this to be middle, but in the context of a circle, that's the inner tier. The middle is the one that's between the two tiers. Okay.
Why am I doing this twice? Because we enjoy redundancy, and it'll be the one time that there isn't something in the data box, but there's one in the previous data box, and whoever's working on this will go, well, what am I supposed to do? And you're like, just verify it with the wheel. It's like, oh, it didn't say to do that, which is true. So explicitness is always nice. All right. So if we select the middle tier, then okay. And that one can be short because there is no step after this. And then, yeah, same thing as before. It'll store it and report back the selections. Okay, so, oh, I don't know why I did this. Hold on. Let's get rid of that, and then let's just do this again, because what's going to end up happening is I'm going to enter steps in between is what's going to happen. I misspelled up here too. Dang it. I'm usually pretty good about that. I probably could have copied and inserted the row, but whatever. Okay, so then now we're back where we want to be because we hit the back button. Come on. Let me select. Come on, let me select the thing I want to select. What the hell? Must we be so difficult? I hate that you do this. And you might be thinking, wow, this is really tedious. Yes, but it's important to show that, yes, this is actually working. Um, all right, so got BackNav going here. So we get to the page and we see the inner tier. We select the inner tier, and then select any of them. We'll verify it from the wheel, and so we should see the middle tier adjectives linked to it. Cool. Tap the back button or gesture back, and that should send us back to the inner tier selection, because we would have selected here, been forced to middle, and now we're forced back to inner. Select another inner tier. We'll pick whichever one you want. The middle tier will be linked. Select the middle tier. Select any of them. We go to the outer tier. If I hit the back button twice, we go from middle to inner. Now we select inner, we select middle, and then we select out, and it shows that it works. I think that covers it. Pretty good. Okay. It seems like a pretty solid test plan. Is there anything that I feel like we're missing? Nope, because it's selection. It proves that the selections work. It proves that if we go back, they work. I think we're safe. I think we're safe on that. And like once we execute it, we can always see. And with that, I think I'm gonna tap out because that was a lot of thinking. But yeah, that's it. So we got through 3 test plans. We wrote a bug, and that was a pretty productive day. Tomorrow is a free-for-all day. I don't know exactly what that's going to mean, but we'll see what we figure out to do. Maybe we play a game, maybe or something, and talk about like what we can learn from it, because that's a very good skill to have, is to be able to judge experience based off of other properties, and it can help you even as a developer. It can help you with evaluating new designs and user experiences. So it makes you much more versatile. It makes it so that you can have a more interesting conversation with your designers. But remember, it's only insofar as understanding, and we can talk more about that. But yeah, it was a pretty productive QA day. So thanks, everyone. I'll see you tomorrow.